A shy girl's secret surgery, but when the millionaire doctor arrives, everything changes forever. Molly had never been the center of attention. A quiet girl with dreams too big for her timid heart, she blended into the background like a whisper in a crowded room. But today, everything was different. The buzzing lights of the hospital overhead flickered like warning signals, throwing shadows across the sterile white walls. Today, she was about to step into a world that felt just as alien as her own reflection. A secret surgery, a cosmetic enhancement that promised to transform her life, was on the table. She couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement, mixed with excruciating fear. Who would she become? The sound of nurses bustling in and out filled the air like a nervous symphony. Sense of antiseptic lingered, sharp and clinical. Molly's heart raced. She had been wrestling with her decision for weeks, battling her own doubts. Yet, the thought of what could be a confident version of herself kept bubbling to the surface. As she lay back on the operating table, the harsh lights seemed to amplify her apprehension, each flicker echoing her pounding heart. Just when she thought the anxiety couldn't get any stronger, the door swung open. In walked Dr. Nathaniel Stark, the millionaire surgeon whose reputation was as polished as his perfectly tailored suit. He was a man who didn't just perform surgeries. He created masterpieces, chiseled from flesh and bone. The instant he stepped into the room, the atmosphere shifted. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, and it was as if he could see straight into her very soul. Unsurprisingly, the nurses exchanged glances, and whispers fluttered around like frantic butterflies. "Ready to take the plunge?" he asked, his voice smooth like honey, slicing through her tension. A part of her wanted to say no, to run the other way, but another part, the one that craved change, whispered yes. She swallowed, feeling a lump in her throat. The moment was electric. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Would she leap? Would she trust him? Just then, the soft whir of machines filled the silence, and the weight of the moment pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Before she could decide, he smiled a charming, captivating smile, and everything started to whirl around her. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Then suddenly, just before the anesthesia took her under, she saw something flash in Dr. Stark's eyes. Was it fear? Concern? It was gone in a heartbeat, but it left her unsettled. As darkness enveloped her, a question lingered in her mind. What kind of doctor hides secrets behind his charming facade? When Molly woke up, everything felt different. The sounds, the smells, even the light felt sharper. But the moment she tried to lift her head, a sharp pain shot through her. Confused, she glanced around, looking for a familiar face. Instead, she found something far stranger. Dr. Stark standing over her, a frown on his handsome face. What had actually happened during her surgery? The clock tick-tocked loudly, each second amplifying her heart's unsteady rhythm. But before she could ask, he stepped closer. "Eyes serious. We need to talk." His words sent a jolt of panic through her. What was he about to reveal? The room felt stifling. Molly's senses were still adjusting, and the haze of anesthesia lingered like a fog, clouding her thoughts. Dr. Stark leaned in closer, the frown deepening, his brows knitted in genuine concern. "Molly, there were complications." Complications? The word echoed in her mind, sending icy tendrils of fear creeping down her spine. She could barely nod, her body still groggy, but adrenaline surged as she attempted to understand. What did he mean? He took a breath, his voice low and deliberate, as if he was piecing together a fragile puzzle. "The changes we discussed, they weren't as straightforward as we anticipated." His eyes studied her, searching for a way to deliver the news without shattering her even more. There was unexpected bleeding. Molly's heart plummeted. Bleeding? The word felt foreign, as if it didn't belong in this carefully curated moment. Panic began to bubble beneath the surface, and she pushed through the haze of medication. "What does that mean? Am I okay?" Dr. Stark's expression softened, though the worry in his gaze remained. Yes, physically you're stable now. But there may be permanent changes to your procedure. We need to evaluate how deeply the adjustments have affected you. Her breath hitched. What could that mean? What kind of changes? The idea of waking up to a different version of herself sent daggers of dread through her. The procedures were supposed to be a gateway to the person she longed to be, not a trapdoor to uncertainty. I'll be here every step of the way, Molly, he reassured, though the slight tremor in his voice betrayed his certainty. Little did he know the depth of her fears. You're not alone. It sounded good. It felt genuine. But uncertainty still twisted in her gut. Suddenly, her eyes darted to the monitors beeping around her. One in particular was flashing a sequence that sent alarms ringing in her mind, almost as if the machine had its own voice, warning her. Wait, what does that mean? She gasped as she noticed the numbers fluctuating wildly. Before Dr. Stark had a chance to respond, the door swung open with a crash. Nurses flooded in, faces pale with urgency, grabbing equipment and preparing to act. The tension rushed into the room like a tidal wave, drowning her fragile sense of safety. Molly, stay calm, Dr. Stark urged, but the pounding in her chest was drowning out his words. She felt a sensation of cold prickling her skin. Something had gone terribly wrong. The cacophony of voices melded into an overwhelming noise. She wanted to scream, but her throat felt constricted. Just then, something caught her eye, a flash of metal. A surgical tool, abandoned and glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was a reminder of the very procedure that had turned her life upside down. The nurses worked swiftly, the atmosphere intensified, but she wasn't just afraid for herself anymore. The rush of fear mixed with something else, curiosity. What were they afraid of? Amidst the chaos, Dr. Stark turned back to her. Molly, please listen. This isn't just a medical issue. It's also about your life moving forward. Are you ready for that? His question hung in the air, charged with an intensity that felt as heavy as the room's sterile scent. Before she could digest his words, another figure entered, an unknown man dressed in a white lab coat, his expression unreadable yet urgent. Dr. Stark, we need to consult about a potential infection. She exhibited signs during the procedure. Molly's mind spun. Infection? Cabinet doors creaked open. Shadows danced on the wall. She felt the stitches beneath her skin tugging at her, reminding her of the hidden consequences of her choice. Everything spiraled. One thought burned through the chaos. What dark truth hid behind the glamorous facade of the millionaire doctor? The air was thick with uncertainty, a promise of more revelations to come. And as she lay there trapped between fear and hope, she realized the answers she sought were slipping further out of reach. What had she truly signed up for? Her heart raced with anticipation, and a wildfire of questions ignited within her, hungry for answers. Little did she know, her journey had just begun. The chaos escalated in the small room. The team of nurses buzzed around, instruments clattering, footsteps echoing against the sterile floor tiles. Molly felt the weight of the white sheets pressing against her, her body trapped and bound by an unseen force. What do you mean, infection? She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, though her heart drummed in her ears. Dr. Stark's gaze narrowed, focusing on the new arrival. We can't jump to conclusions, he said sharply, then turned back to her, his expression shifting with some internal struggle. Tell me the truth, doctor. Am I in danger? Instead of answering, he shot a glance at the monitors, anxiety flashing across his face. We need to stabilize your vitals first. Then he broke off, his breath hitching in his throat. Molly's insides twisted. The lines between reality and her dreams merged into a terrifying blur. All this time, she thought she was reclaiming her life, taking control of her future. But now it felt like she was spiraling into an abyss where she could lose everything. The man in the lab coat stepped closer, adjusting his glasses, his tone clipped. We've seen this before. Post-operative infections can manifest quickly. Symptoms include fever, fast heart rate. He paused, meeting her wide-eyed stare. We need to act fast. A knot formed in her throat. Panic threatened to take hold of her as images flashed through her mind, mugs of steaming coffee shared with friends, laughter ringing in her ears, the promise of a new beginning. All of it was becoming increasingly far away. The machines beeped in a desperate rhythm, matching the frantic pace of her heart. She could hear murmurs from the nurses, snippets of terminology that felt foreign and chilling. Words like antibiotics and four fluids drifted in and out of her consciousness, feeling like a voodoo spell for a reality she never wanted. I can't do this," Molly gasped, feeling the weight of the world crushing her chest. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes as she grappled with the surreal heaviness of the moment. Listen to me," Dr. Stark said sharply, grounding her momentarily in his urgency. "The next few hours are critical. I need you to focus. You're strong. You can get through this." Her breath caught. Strong? She didn't feel strong. She felt lost, exposed on a battlefield without armor. But what if? Before she could finish, the door swung open again, this time with a squad of physicians filing in, their expressions grave. The intensity of their discussions filled the room, drowning everything in statistics, concerns, and hypotheses. Molly's mind raced, struggling to hold onto the threads of coherence. She caught snippets. Unidentified bacteria, serious implications, we need to act immediately. Each phrase struck her like a bullet. What happened to the calm plans she once had? Dr. Stark moved to another side of the room, locked in a hushed conversation with the anomaly in the white coat. She couldn't hear the words, but the tension that mounted felt tangible, a loaded silence thick enough to suffocate. Then, ironically, a sudden burst of clarity pierced the fog of her mind. A determination stirred deep inside her. She couldn't be a passive player in the unfolding drama of her life any longer. "I need to know what is happening," she demanded, her voice louder, cutting through the medical chatter. Dr. Starks had snapped to her, eyes wide in surprise. The entire room fell quiet, everyone's attention snapping back to her. The gravity of her situation pressed heavily upon her chest. "Please, just tell me what I'm facing." But as he stared at her, a glimmer of something dark flickered in his eyes. Above the chaos, a silent conversation unfolded between him and the stranger beside him. "Dr. Stark, she deserves the truth," the stranger finally said, his voice firm. In that moment, Molly knew the answers waited just beyond reach, dancing tantalizingly in a fog of fear. "What truth?" she probed, urgency dousing her rising panic. Only silence answered her, thick and suffocating. And as she forced herself to breathe, a chilling thought settled in her mind. What if the truth was far worse than she could ever have imagined? Time stretched agonizingly as realizations loomed like shadows, waiting to strike. Would she be able to endure whatever was coming next? Molly braced herself, knowing she had a storm to face. But this storm felt unlike anything she'd ever encountered. She had to prepare for the worst. What awaited her beyond that door? The shadows beckoned, twisting the reality she once thought she knew. The silence hung, thick like smoke. Molly scanned the room, desperate for answers, but every face wore an air of dread, a collective heaviness that paralyzed the air between them. She felt like a small boat on a raging sea. Dr. Stark's posture shifted. The weight of whatever he was hiding was stifling. "You deserve to know, Molly," he finally said, his voice steady but low, as if he didn't want the nurses to hear. "There's a possibility that this infection is linked to a rare complication." Her heart raced. What kind of complication? He hesitated, glancing back at the stranger with the piercing eyes. "You may have contracted something unusual during your surgery." Molly's mind spun, grappling with the implications. Unusual? The term echoed ominously in her head. She was struggling to recall the faces, the voices from her last visit. The memory was foggy, blurry, as if seen through murky glass. "What are you saying?" she whispered, before he could respond. Another physician, a woman with sharp features and a clipboard, interjected, "We need to begin the tests immediately. Time is of the essence." Her words felt like a cold splash of water, jolting Molly back into the moment. "Tests?" Molly repeated, her voice quaking. "What do you mean tests? What are you looking for?" "The bacteria could spread, and if it's already moved into your bloodstream," Dr. Stark paused, his eyes clouding with concern. "We can't let this escalate." Panic surged through Molly. Bloodstream? She felt her pulse in her throat, each beat drumming a frantic warning. She could imagine tendrils of darkness creeping through her, tightening around her organs, suffocating her from the inside out. "You've got to do something," she pleaded, panic bubbling into desperation. I can't afford to lose this chance. I just got my life back. Stay with me, Molly. Focus, Dr. Stark said, his intensity cutting through the fog of fear. We'll act fast. Act fast, she echoed, though a sense of helplessness pierced through her. Would it be enough? Would she make it through the next few hours? As the nurses moved around her, prepping equipment, Molly's eyes caught the man in the white coat again. He blinked at her like he held secrets, a depth of knowledge that felt both comforting and terrifying. What made him so sure? Suddenly, a chilling thought struck her as more physicians entered the room. What if the treatment itself contained something dangerous? What if the very people trying to save her were tied to whatever was now trying to destroy her? Dr. Stark began to talk again, his voice urgent but focused. Molly, we need you to trust us. Follow our instructions precisely. Can you do that? She swallowed hard, nodding though a deep unease curled in her stomach. Good. Let us get a line in, start the fluids, and the cultures as soon as the lab is ready. Reality faded like a distant echo as she succumbed to a new wave of fear. Shadows flitted across her mind, possibilities that twisted her gut into knots. But even as the storm raged around her, a flicker of rebellion ignited within. She wouldn't be a victim. No, the nurse's hands were skilled, but they felt like rough stone against her skin as they initiated the four. And then a scream erupted from down the hall. It cut through the tension, sharp and shocking. Molly's heart leapt in response. A feeling of doom washed over her, heavier than anything she had experienced yet. What was that? She gasped. Dr. Stark stiffened, his expression barely masking alarm. Stay calm, Molly. Focus on me. But chaos erupted in the hall just beyond the door, louder and more frantic than before, pulling everyone's attention as panic spread through the ranks of white coats. What lay behind that door? And was it already too late for her? Just as her breath quickened again, the door swung wide, revealing a figure that made her blood run cold. Their presence threatened to unravel everything she fought to hold on to. Now she knew the questions were just beginning. What was this new arrival here to do? Would they help or make everything worse? Molly's breath caught in her throat as the figure stepped into the room. The air shifted, thickening with an unshakable tension. The stranger was tall and clad in an immaculate white coat, with features so sharp they could cut glass. His eyes, dark and penetrating, swept across the room until they landed on her, calculating, as if sizing up her very essence. Molly, I'm Dr. Vance, he said, his voice smooth like silk yet carrying an undeniable weight. I'm here to assist with your case. There was an unspoken assurance in his demeanor, but she felt a shiver travel down her spine. There was something about him, an energy that hummed like an electric current, and it unsettled her more than the screaming she had just heard. Assist? She echoed, trying to catch the threads of her scattered thoughts. Dr. Stark stepped in, his own expression a mix of tension and frustration. I'm handling the case, Dr. Vance. We don't need time is against us. Dr. Vance interjected, turning his full attention to Molly, ignoring Stark's protest. We need to analyze the potential risks quickly. If there's a chance this infection is as serious as I believe, we might be dealing with something far more sinister. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. I can help you. Molly hesitated. Did she sense compassion or merely clinical curiosity? Either way, the underlying current of urgency rattled her nerves. What if this was a ploy? What if he wanted something beyond her mere survival? The questions spiraled in her mind, battling against her desperate need for help. Please, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper, tell me what's going on. Dr. Vance's lips tightened, though he didn't lose his professional smile. We've seen cases like yours before. Complications from surgeries can sometimes lead to unexpected consequences. He lowered his voice, almost conspiratorially. I need to know everything about your surgery. Who performed it? What was the diagnosis? In the background, nurses scurried around her like frantic ants, their conversations drowned out by the chaos of the unfolding drama. Molly felt the pressure mounting, squeezing her chest. The connection between her fear and this man's intentions tightened like a noose. I can't remember, she admitted, feeling more vulnerable than ever. Everything is so foggy. Dr. Stark interrupted. We need to start the tests, Vance. Her vital signs are dropping. But Vance wasn't listening. With a flick of his wrist, he gestured for silence and made direct eye contact with her. Molly, You have to trust me. If we don't act now, you may not have a chance. Casting a wary glance at Dr. Stark, she felt torn. What kind of infection am I dealing with? You can't truly comprehend the risks without knowing everything. It could spread beyond treatment. Into her very cells, Vance's tone was hypnotic, weaving a cautionary tale that felt dire. In that moment, chaos swelled around her, a whirlwind of hurried whispers and the sound of rubber-soled shoes squeaking against polished floors. She could hear distant wails, the echoes of a hospital in turmoil, adding to her dread. Something's wrong. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Vance leaned in closer. You're right. There is something amiss in this hospital, and I suspect it's intertwined with your case. The realization hit her like a jolt. You know something, don't you? She felt the walls closing in, an invisible pressure climbing higher. That he nodded slowly. But time is running out. Choose now, Molly. Do you want my help, or will you heed Dr. Stark's instructions without question? Molly blinked, grappling with the magnitude of the decision at hand. Was this her moment to reclaim control, or was it another trap? As shadows danced along the edges of her panic, her heart raced, and the stakes felt higher than ever. She was on the cusp of the unknown. What will it take? She asked, breathless and ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Dr. Vance's lips twitched, revealing a glimmer of something, hope or danger. She couldn't tell. To learn the truth about the infection and save your life. Everything. Before she could process his words, another scream erupted from down the hallway, void of humanity and laced with terror. What in the world was happening to her hospital? And how far would she have to go to uncover the secrets hidden within its walls? The scream echoed through the sterile halls, each cry crackling like static in Molly's mind. Her pulse quickened, fear twisted in her stomach, rising like bile. She tore her eyes away from Dr. Vance's piercing gaze, glancing at Dr. Stark, who looked pale and stricken by the mounting chaos outside their room. Enough with the theatrics, Vance. Stark snapped, his voice strained. We're losing precious time here. Molly needs a diagnosis, not riddles. Dr. Vance's expression didn't waver, but behind the cool veneer, a flicker of irritation flashed. If you want to address the symptoms, you must first understand the root cause, he insisted, turning back to Molly. But this requires a leap of faith. Molly's heart felt as if it might explode. A leap of faith? The words tasted bitter in her mouth. Could she really trust this man? This stranger who seemed both savior and predator? Please, I'm running out of time. The urgency in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. Tell me everything about your surgery. I need specifics. Who was the surgeon? What was the medicine prescribed? The sooner we know, the sooner we can act. She drew a deep breath, the memories dancing just out of reach. It was Dr. Henderson, she finally managed. She mentioned something about complications. There was scarring? Dr. Vance leaned closer, a spark igniting in his eyes. Scarring can mean many things, but I suspect this is something more serious. It could lead to suddenly. The sound of frantic footsteps echoed loudly in the hallway, growing nearer. The door burst open, and a nurse barged in, breathless and pale, her eyes wide with terror. Dr. Stark. There has been an outbreak. Patients are exhibiting strange behaviors, aggressive tendencies. She was cut short by another horrible scream, one that sent a chill creeping up Molly's spine. Isolate the patients. Get security. Keep this wing locked. Dr. Stark barked as panic surged through him. But the nurse was shaking her head, horror etched on her face. I can't. There, Vance's voice cut through the chaos, deep and measured. Molly, follow my lead. You must choose, and quickly. Time is slipping away. What are you suggesting? She was trembling now, overwhelmed by the whirlwind of confusion and fear. They say truth lies in the unknown. If we want to fix this, we have to dig deeper into the shadowy corners of this hospital, he said, a barely hidden urgency laced through his tone. You have to decide if you're ready to confront whatever it is that infected you. Molly's heart thudded, her instincts screaming at her to flee, yet another part of her, a braver, bolder part, yearned to understand. What if it's something horrific? That's a risk we must take, he insisted, eyes locking onto hers, an intensity blazing between them. But we must hurry. If the outbreak is linked to your case, the clock is ticking. We're talking about lives. Dr. Stark's frustrated curse punctured the air, but Molly hardly heard him. She was lost in the turmoil within her mind. What if the truth was more terrifying than she could handle? But the weight of the situation felt monumental, and something deep within her stirred a fierce determination to uncover the reality lurking behind the veil. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady as she squared her shoulders. "I want to know." "Then we must move now," Dr. Vance urged, urgency radiating from him. "Grab whatever you can. We'll be going deep into the heart of this hospital. It's time to unveil the truth." As they prepared to leave, the air thickened with uncertainty, the tension pulsing between them like an impending storm. With a glance at Dr. Stark, who looked too stunned to act, Molly stepped forward, ready to embark on this dangerous path, racing into the unknown. Yet, as they dashed into the dimly lit hallway, something caught her eye. A shadow flitted at the edge of her vision, whispering secrets, a fleeting figure that seemed to slip away, leading them toward the whispered horrors of the hospital's dark underbelly. "Who was that?" she gasped, eyes wide with dread, heart pounding in her chest. Vance frowned, his expression darkening. "We're not alone. Let us move." But as they rushed forward, one haunting thought echoed in Molly's mind. What if the truth was just as monstrous as the mystery they feared to unravel? The dim lights flickered above, casting eerie shadows on the sterile walls, amplifying the urgency of their escape. Molly's heart raced. Each step echoed like a drumbeat in her ears as she and Dr. Vance navigated the chaos. Dr. Stark lagged behind, still reeling from the nurse's alarming words. "Molly, stay close," Vance urged, his voice clipped and commanding. They rounded a corner and rushed down a narrow corridor lined with rooms that felt almost too quiet. The atmosphere was charged, thick with a palpable fear that seemed to wrap around them like a suffocating shroud. Molly felt the weight of the unknown settling heavy on her, but that bold resolve stirred within her still. "Where are we going?" she managed, glancing back at Vance, who advanced with relentless determination. "To the archives," he replied, glancing sideways, his jaw tense. "We need to uncover records related to your treatment, any anomalies." Molly's stomach churned. What if there is something worse than I imagined? Vance fixed her with a fierce gaze, directing her toward a door marked "Personnel Only." "We can't ignore the possibility. If the outbreak is connected to your surgery, it's essential we find out exactly what was done to you." As they entered the dimly lit room cluttered with dust-covered files, a wave of unease washed over Molly. Old medical equipment lay scattered among stacks of papers and charts. She couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked just beyond her understanding. While Vance began rifling through stacks of folders, Molly's attention was drawn to a large map pinned to the far wall. Marked with red circles, it outlined the hospital along with the locations of reported disturbances and patient anomalies. In stark contrast, the clinic's heart seemed strangely cold, unmarked, abandoned. "What is this?" she asked, stepping closer, her fingers grazing the rough paper. "That's where we need to focus," Vance murmured, still engrossed in his search. "It could be central." Before they could dig deeper, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by a chilling shout. Instinctively, Molly's heart dropped and her pulse skyrocketed. Vance snapped to attention, his eyes locking onto hers with alarming intensity. "We don't have time to linger," he said, urgency saturating his words. "Keep an eye on the door. We need to move." Just as the door swung open and an agitated Dr. Stark stumbled in, eyes wide with fear. "They're here." They breached the isolation wing. He shouted, panting heavily. "We have to go now." Panic surged through Molly. "What do you mean they?" Stark's expression turned grave. "It's not just the patients. Staff, they're exhibiting violent behavior too. We have to get out." Before an ear-splitting scream erupted down the hallway, followed by a series of shouts and chaos. The shadows began to twist and writhe outside the door, as if the darkness itself bore witness to the madness unfolding. "Go, Molly, now," Vance barked, his voice cutting through the din. They were thrust into flight once more, Molly's feet pounding against the sterile floor, heart racing. Her mind whirled with horrifying possibilities. Everything she had always trusted within these walls, this hallowed institution, was unraveling before her eyes. If what Vance suspected was true, she might be the key to understanding this nightmare. But the fear of the unknown pushed into the forefront, whispering doubts into her mind. Did she truly want to uncover what lurked in her own medical past? Did she risk everything for the sake of knowledge, knowing it might unravel not just her, but everyone around her? As they dashed into another twist of darkness, Molly's breath hitched. In the distance, someone was approaching, a figure shrouded in shadow, moving with a purpose. "Who is that?" she gasped, halting in her tracks. Vance's eyes darkened, filled with dread. "Whatever it is, it's not friendly." Then, before she could react, a face appeared within the shadows, twisted and wild. The question echoed painfully through her mind. Were they racing toward a truth or a deeper terror? Molly's heart hammered against her ribs as the shadowed figure stepped closer. An unsettling familiarity washed over her, dragging her thoughts back to the surgery she had undergone and the strange dreams that followed. Yet, the face now emerging bore a twisted smile, the kind that made her stomach churn. "Look what the cat dragged in," the figure hissed, voice tinged with mockery. It was a nurse, her scrubs disheveled and stained, eyes wild with an unsettling intensity. "You shouldn't be here. None of you should." "Molly, back!" Vance shouted, thrusting her behind him as he moved to confront the nurse. Dr. Stark was already scanning the corridor, alert to the sounds of more chaos echoing through the halls. The frantic footsteps were growing louder, and Molly could feel the panic rise like bile in her throat. "What's happening?" Molly managed to ask, voice shaky. She grabbed Vance's arm, desperation etched on her face. "What did they do to her?" Vance glared at the nurse, his voice steady beneath the chaos. "You're not yourself. We need to get you help." The nurse's laughter rang out, shrill and haunting. "Help? You think I want help? No, I want to show you the truth lurking beneath these walls." With a sudden burst of energy, she lunged toward them. Vance sidestepped, instinctively pulling Molly closer as the nurse crashed against the wall, her body temporarily stunned. "Let us go," Dr. Stark yelled, urgency pressing in on them as he pointed toward a side exit. "There are more coming. We need to leave before they could move." A door further down the hallway slammed open. Shadows spilled out like a tide. A group of twisted figures, more doctors and nurses, all wearing expressions of ecstatic rage. "Run!" Vance yelled, pushing Molly forward. They moved in a frantic sprint, adrenaline surging through them. Molly's breath came in frantic gasps, feet stumbling over each other as they raced deeper into the maze of hallways. But no matter how fast they ran, the danger felt close behind, like a predator stalking its prey. Each scream, each echoing crash heightened her disorientation. With every corner they turned, uncertainty danced in front of her, teasing the edge of her consciousness. "Hurry, the archives. We'll find something there," Stark gasped, fighting to keep pace. As they hurled themselves toward a heavy door, Vance pulled it open just as the chaos fanned out behind them. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Metal shelves towered, packed with files and documents long forgotten. Retroactive warnings echoed in the back of Molly's mind. She had come here hoping for answers about herself, and found only madness. "Dig fast," Vance commanded, tossing papers aside as he searched. "We need to identify the point of outbreak." Molly shivered, yet her hands moved gracefully over the brittle pages, the ink smudged. It felt unreal, pieces of a puzzle that no one had much time to sift through. Something caught her eye, a name crossed out in red ink. Beneath it, another layer of letters formed a medical term that sent chills down her spine. "What is?" she muttered, but before she could finish, a scream erupted from beyond the door, followed by a loud thud. They were running out of time. "Vance!" Molly shouted, pointing at the name she had discovered. He leaned closer, brow knitting with concentration. "That should have been a routine procedure. Why is it here?" Behind them, the door splintered, cracked under the pressure of pounding fists. The shadowed figures moved with a frenetic determination. "Now, we can't stay here," Stark yelled, pulling them both toward the back of the archives, a narrow path leading deeper into the building. But with every second that rushed by, Molly felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her. What had started as a desperate search was quickly becoming a descent into horror. "Wait, what if I'm the reason this happened?" she gasped, the enormity of the thought crashing over her like a wave. In that moment, the shadows burst through the doorway. "Run!" Vance shouted, and they plunged into unfathomable darkness, unsure of the path ahead. But deep down, a dreadful realization gnawed at Molly. Whatever they were unearthing would test their very souls. What if the source of this nightmare was tied to her in ways she couldn't imagine? As the grip of fear tightened, she could only wonder how much of herself was she willing to unearth, and would it be worth the horror that lay ahead? The narrow path twisted and turned, devoid of light, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. Each hurried footfall echoed, a chaotic drumbeat marking their panic. Shadows danced at the edges of Molly's sight, teasing the edges of her sanity. It didn't take long for the shadowed figures to spill into the corridor behind them, relentless and hungry. "Molly, stay close," Vance shouted, his voice strained with urgency. He grabbed her hand and pulled her deeper into the dark. The white noise of muffled screams faded in the distance, replaced by the sound of their own breaths, harsh, loud, terrified. "What if this is all my fault?" Molly gasped, fighting the rising tide of panic within her. "Focus, Molly. We'll figure it out," Vance insisted, but even his confidence was wavering. They stumbled into a darkened storeroom, its cold atmosphere contrasting starkly with the frantic heat radiating from their bodies. Vance kicked the door shut just as the echoes of chaos rattled against the walls. The room was filled with medical supplies and equipment, some familiar and some alien. An old surgical table lay in the center, covered with haunting remnants of operations long past. A sharp scalpel glinted ominously in the weak light. "What is this place?" Molly whispered, her voice trembling. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a figure hiding in the corner, slumped against a wall. It was the nurse, the one with the twisted smile. Her disheveled hair framed a face marred with exhaustion, yet her gaze held an unsettling clarity, as if she had glimpsed the depths of a darkness that no one else could see. "She knows something," Vance said, edging closer. "Maybe she can help us." Molly hesitated, every instinct warning her against approaching the woman, but Vance pressed forward. "Why are you here?" Vance demanded, his voice steady. "What happened to the hospital?" "I'm not here to help," the nurse murmured, her voice low and haunted. "I'm chained to the truth, just like you. You both don't understand, yet the surgery changed everything." "What surgery?" Molly asked, heart racing as dread filled the room. The nurse's eyes flared with a wild intensity, revealing glimpses of clarity amidst hysteria. They didn't just cut into flesh. They cut into something much deeper. They unleashed a terror, and now it's alive. It's feeding on our fear, our nightmares it wants out. Vance exchanged a panicked glance with Molly, uncertainty flickering like a candle in the wind. "We need a way out. Is there a way to stop this?" "The truth is the only way to undo the horror," the nurse said breathlessly, voice rising in urgency. "But it will demand a sacrifice. Are you prepared to face your own?" Molly felt a chill creep over her skin. "What does that mean?" Before the nurse could respond, the door rattled violently, threatening to burst open. The shadows were closing in, fueled by the hunger for chaos. "Now," Vance shouted, pulling Molly away from the nurse as he scanned the room for another exit. They rushed past the surgical table, adrenaline sparking new speed in their legs. But the oppressive weight of the situation pressed on them, and Molly felt the walls closing in. With a sudden crash, the door flew open, revealing a swarm of twisted figures screaming and clawing toward them. In that moment, she turned and locked eyes with the nurse, but it was too late. "Molly!" Vance yelled as they sprinted toward a flickering exit sign in the distance. But another wave of shadows surged toward them, blinding and suffocating. Just when escape felt inevitable, Molly noticed something out of the corner of her eye, a glimmering file that slid off the table, the name affixed to it sending shockwaves through her. She halted, pulled by an unseen force. "Wait, Molly, we don't have time," Vance called, but the words faded against the pulse of dread that beat within her. As shadows loomed closer, she reached down to grab it, her breathing shallow, the air thick with fear. Whatever lay within those pages could either reveal her connection to this horror or plunge them deeper into the abyss. With her choice made, she turned to Vance, the weight of uncertainty hanging heavy between them. "Let us see what happens next." What if the truth was more explosive than they ever imagined? The chaos around Molly swelled like a tidal wave ready to crash over them. As her fingers brushed against the file, she felt a spark of determination ignite within her. This was it. This was the moment she could reclaim her narrative and confront the shadows lurking in her past. "Molly, please," Vance implored, urgency edging his voice. The figures behind them, desperate and thrashing, were nearly upon them. She could feel the oppressive weight of darkness closing in, but she could not turn away from this chance to understand. She yanked the file free with a sharp tug and held it tightly against her chest. "I have to know," she shouted back, her heart racing. With no time to spare, they darted toward the flickering exit sign, squinting against the harsh glow. Behind them, the figures from the hospital twisted closer, faces contorted with rage, fueled by something beyond reason. Molly could hear their breathless panting growing louder, an echo of her own heartbeat. "We need to find a safe place," Vance urged, gripping her arm as they burst through the door into a lifeless corridor. Panic rippled through her, but she opened the file then, ignoring the chaos behind her. Her eyes darted over the words scrawled on the pages. Her own name was there, Molly Washington, along with medical jargon that felt completely foreign. Yet, one word caught her breath: experimental. "What does this mean?" she gasped, wide-eyed, as the truth began to unfold. Vance peered over, his expression morphing from urgency to horror as he took in the details. This can't be right," he gasped, his face draining of color. "They were using you as a test subject?" "No, I can't be. Why would they?" The shock thundered through her, a heavy weight that threatened to crush her spirit. The realization that her surgery had been part of something twisted, something deeply sinister, clenched at her every nerve. "Because the outcomes could lead to breakthroughs if they worked," Vance explained, his voice grim. "But if they went wrong," understanding dawned on her, illuminating the shadows of dread. "They could unleash hell," she whispered, the fear burrowing deeper into her heart. The grotesque figures surged closer in an unholy frenzy, their wild eyes trained on her, their intentions dark. "We need to disable the mainframe, cut off the supply that is feeding them," Vance said urgently, steering her toward a door at the end of the corridor. "It controls the infection. If we disrupt it, we might have a chance." Just as they reached the door, another scream pierced the air, a horrible, gut-wrenching cry that froze Molly in place. It came from a twisted figure, another doctor, someone she recognized. "What have you done?" he howled, agony etched across his features. "You'll unleash it all." "What is the it?" Molly demanded, feeling the weight of their choices intensify. "What did the surgery unlock?" "I can't protect you from what is coming." The doctor's voice warped, eyes wild with fear and understanding. "You've opened the door. Don't you see?" "No," Vance shouted, pulling Molly away from the encroaching darkness. They shoved through the door, slamming it shut behind them. "We need to act now." Inside, the atmosphere crackled with intensity. Rows of machines lined the sterile walls, each muted hum a reminder of the chaos outside. Vance located a panel, fingers flying over controls as he roared, "This is the nerve center. If we can cut the power to the infected floor," the flickering lights overhead sent chills through her spine. Molly's stomach knotted. "And if it doesn't work?" she asked, a tremor in her voice. "I can't think like that. We need hope," Vance urged, his tension amplifying hers. "You have to help me." Taking a deep breath, Molly nodded, bracing herself for whatever lay ahead. They raced to the control console, flicking switches and pressing buttons, determination fueling their every movement. But as Vance initiated the shutdown sequence, alarms blared, red lights flashing like angry fireflies, a siren of impending doom. "No," Vance cursed, shadows banged against the door. Molly's heart thudded in her chest. "They're going to come for us. We have to hurry." With her hands trembling, Molly scanned the control panel. Other screens lit up, revealing camera feeds of chaos unfolding throughout the facility. Patients, staff transformed into something monstrous. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore," she exclaimed, panic and passion intertwining. "We need to end this for good." The room pulsed with urgency as Vance shouted, "Almost there." But the shadows now bore down on them like a dark storm, thundering at the door, hungry for flesh and fear. "My surgery, it wasn't just about me, was it? It was a catalyst," she shouted, desperate for clarity amid the chaos. "It connected me to whatever this is. I can end it. We're doing it together," Vance replied, eyes fierce as their hands met over the console. "One last push," he urged, and just as the door crashed against the wall, Molly shouted, "Now?" With a final press, they unleashed a shockwave through the system. Lights flickered violently as sirens wailed. Outside, the shadows screeched in a cacophony of fury, one last twisted attempt to hold onto their grip over the hospital. But as the systems short-circuited, pulsating energy surged through the walls, and Molly felt a weight lift, like the lifting of a dark winter fog. This isn't just a fight for my life, it's a rebirth. As the initial wave of energy coursed through her, shadows dissipated, and cries transformed to echoes of relief. The storm subsided, adrenaline drained away, leaving only hollow exhaustion. Dr. Vance looked at her, bewildered yet proud, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. You did it, Molly. You saved them. But the shadows still lurked in her mind, remnants of what had been unleashed. And what about us? She replied softly. What happens to me now? As she searched Vance's gaze, she could see the depth of understanding shared between them. We face it together. In that moment, with the world around them beginning to quiet, her fear unwound. It felt like the end of a cold winter, the birth of something new. As they surveyed the empty hall that had only moments ago been filled with chaos, a calming warmth wrapped around them. There was still uncertainty ahead, a journey to undertake, and a past to heal. But together, they could reshape not just their fates, but perhaps even the future of medicine itself. With resolve strengthening her, Molly stepped forward, ready to embrace whatever came next. The shadows had given way to light. It was time to become the woman she had longed to be. Let us go, Molly said, determination lining her voice. Together, before them lay the path of reclamation, and she felt the surge of hope for a brighter future carry her forward. That's when a voice broke the silence. It echoed from deep within the hospital's belly, a lingering truth she knew wasn't quite finished spilling. And what if change isn't what it seems? A chilling laugh reverberated through the walls. You have just begun to tap into the secrets hidden here. Would the shadows truly remain defeated? Or would the darkness find a way to rise again? This marked only the beginning of their journey, a tale not just of survival, but of secrets threaded with shadows surfacing again and again. But for now, she took a breath, anchored in the newfound strength that flickered against the encroaching darkness. And as they stepped into the light, Molly whispered to herself, I'm ready. Did you feel that? The emotional highs and lows. The thrill of the unknown? You need to subscribe now to our channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments with your thoughts on this mind-blowing conclusion. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this explosive ending. We can't wait to hear from you.